She fell in love with her father's greatest enemy. What happened next shocked the entire Wild West. Red Mesa was not like the old towns in storybooks. It was a frontier settlement on a dry desert planet, where the wind carried red dust across solar panels and wooden porches. The people still wore wide hats and boots because the sun was harsh and the sand got everywhere. But above their heads, satellite lights blinked in the night, and the water pumps were powered by clean fusion cells. Sheriff Elias Carter stood on the boardwalk outside the station, watching the horizon through a pair of smart lenses that looked like old binoculars. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and calm in the way only a man with too many hard memories could be. His badge was real metal, not a hologram. He liked it that way. A bell chimed softly from the town's lookout tower. One slow chime, then two, then three. Elias' eyes narrowed. Three meant unknown ship. People started stepping out of shops and homes. Doors creaked. Boots tapped. A few ranch hands shaded their eyes and stared at the sky. Up there, a silver streak cut across the blue, growing larger with every second. Leela Carter came running from the stable area behind the sheriff's office. She was 20, quick and fearless, with her hair tied back and a tool belt still hanging at her side. She had been fixing a broken hover saddle when she heard the lookout. "Dad," she said, breathing lightly, "that's not one of our trader routes." "I know," Elias replied. The ship descended in a controlled spiral. It was not big like a corporate cruiser and not small like a mail pod. It was the size of a cargo cutter, but its shape was wrong, sleek, sharp, like it was built to slip through danger. As it lowered behind the ridge outside town, the ground trembled. Dust rose in a rolling wave. Leela watched her father's jaw tighten. Elias never showed fear, but he showed something else now, something sharp and old. "You know that ship?" she asked. "I know the kind," Elias said. "And I know the man who used to fly it." Leela's stomach tightened. "Who?" Elias did not answer. Instead, he turned and walked into the sheriff's office. He opened a locked drawer and pulled out an older weapon, an energy repeater with scratches on its frame and a faded engraving near the grip. Leela had seen it only once before. That scared her more than anything. Outside, the town gathered near the ridge road, keeping a careful distance. A few elders whispered among themselves. Old Captain Rourke from the militia spat into the dust and muttered, "Trouble never lands gentle." The ship's side hatch opened with a hiss. A ramp slid down. And a man stepped into the sunlight. He wore a long coat that looked like frontier leather, but the seams glimmered faintly with woven tech. He had dark hair, a trimmed beard, and a calm, steady gaze. He did not move like a visitor. He moved like someone who had returned. The crowd stiffened. Then, as if the entire town had taken one shared breath, the name spread like wildfire. Jackson Vale. Leela's heart jumped. She had heard the name her whole life, though never spoken with kindness. In her childhood, it was a warning name, a storm name. The name you said when you wanted a kid to understand that the world was not safe. Jackson Vale was her father's greatest enemy. Elias pushed through the crowd and stopped at the edge of the road. His hand rested near the weapon, but he did not draw it. Jackson looked straight at him. For a moment, everything went silent except the wind. "I didn't think you'd still be here," Jackson said. "I didn't think you'd still be alive," Elias replied. Jackson gave a short, tired smile. "Fair." Leela stepped forward before she could stop herself. "Why are you here?" Jackson's gaze shifted to her. Something softened in his expression, like surprise and respect. "You must be Leela," he said. "Elias' daughter." Leela lifted her chin. "Answer the question." Jackson nodded once. "I'm here because something is coming." Something worse than old grudges. Elias' voice cut through the air. "You don't get to walk into my town and speak like you belong here." "I'm not asking to belong," Jackson said. "I'm asking you to listen." Captain Rourke snorted. "We listened once, didn't end well." Murmurs followed. People remembered stories of the frontier wars, old battles over water rights, trade lanes, and survival. Elias had fought for Red Mesa. Jackson had fought against him, leading a rival faction that nearly broke the settlement's alliance. Leela glanced at her father. She saw anger there, yes, but also pain, deep stored pain. Jackson raised his hands slowly, palms out, showing he meant no threat. "The syndicate is moving this direction," he said. "The Orion Spur Syndicate. They take towns like this one. They don't negotiate. They don't care about your traditions. They care about control." Elias' eyes narrowed. "We've heard syndicate rumors for years." "These aren't rumors," Jackson said. "I've seen what they do. They don't come with one ship. They come with drones first, scouts. They map your defenses. They test your response time. A young rancher called out, "Why should we believe you?" Jackson met his eyes. "Because I'm standing here instead of running, and because I'm not asking you for money, I'm warning you so you can live." Elias took one step closer. "Or you're here to soften us up, to finish what you started years ago." Jackson's jaw tightened. "If I wanted you gone, Elias, I wouldn't have landed in daylight." The tension was so thick it felt like it could snap. Then Leela noticed something. Jackson's ship was scratched and scorched near the rear. Fresh damage, not old war marks, recent. "You've been chased," she said quietly. Jackson looked at her, and for the first time his calm cracked just slightly. "Yes." Elias followed her gaze and saw the damage too. He didn't relax, but his certainty shifted. Before anyone could speak again, the lookout tower chimed. One sharp chime, then a second. Leela turned quickly. "That's not ship alert, that's drone alert," Elias finished. As if on cue, a faint buzzing rose over the ridge. It was high and insect-like, too steady to be natural. People began to back up. A black dot appeared in the sky, then another, then 5 more. Small, fast machines shaped like metallic hawks gliding on silent thrusters. Jackson's voice lowered. "That's them." Elias' hand moved and his weapon came up. "Everyone get back into cover." The town snapped into motion. People hurried behind carts, posts, and stone walls. Leela's mind raced. She didn't panic. She had grown up on a frontier planet. Panic got you hurt. Thinking kept you alive. The drones circled once as if tasting the air. One dropped lower, scanning with a blue beam that swept across the road and the crowd. A loudspeaker crackled from the drone. "Settlement identified," it said in a flat, synthetic tone. "Ownership review pending. Compliance recommended." Leela felt a chill. The voice wasn't angry. It was worse, cold, certain, as if Red Mesa were already a piece of inventory. Elias stepped forward, steady as stone. "This is Red Mesa. We're not for sale." The drone paused, then the speaker crackled again. "Resistance recorded." Jackson moved beside Elias, not touching him, not pushing, but standing with him. "Don't shoot first," Jackson murmured. "They want you to." Elias didn't look at him. "Then what?" Jackson's eyes tracked the sky. "Show them you're not easy." One drone suddenly dove toward the water tower, fast and sharp. Leela understood immediately. If it scanned the tower, it would learn the town's lifeline and mark it for later. Without thinking, Leela sprinted. "Leela!" Elias shouted. But she was already moving, boots pounding sand. She reached the base of the tower and grabbed the maintenance ladder. Her hands moved fast, climbing with the same confidence she used when fixing fusion pumps. Above her, the drone swept closer, its blue scan beam forming a cone. Leela pulled a small device from her belt, a jammer she used to keep dust wolves away from the cattle pens. It wasn't made for military tech, but it might confuse a scanner for a second. She climbed higher, the metal ladder vibrating with her movement. Her fingers tightened. Her breath stayed controlled. Below, she heard Elias calling orders and Captain Rourke shouting to take cover. Jackson's voice rose, clear and commanding. "Militia to the west fence. Don't let them get a full sweep." Leela glanced over her shoulder, startled. Jackson was giving orders like he knew the town's layout, like he had fought here before. The drone reached scanning range. The blue beam widened. Leela raised the jammer and triggered it. A harsh pulse burst out, silent to the ear but strong enough to make the drone twitch midair. Its beam flickered. For a moment it lost balance. Leela's eyes widened. It worked, but the drone corrected quickly, angling toward her. The loudspeaker crackled again. "Interference detected." Leela held her ground on the ladder. She wasn't going to let it tag the tower. From the street, a sharp energy crack sounded, not a lethal blast, but a warning shot. The beam sliced through the dust near the drone, forcing it to pull up. Leela looked down. Jackson stood near the water tower's base, his own weapon raised, angled carefully so it didn't hit her or the tower. He wasn't reckless. He was precise. He glanced up at her. "You're brave," he called. "But don't be stubborn. Come down." Leela swallowed. "Not until it's gone." Jackson's eyes narrowed slightly. "Fair enough." The drones circled again, their patterns shifting, like predators deciding whether to press the attack. They weren't here to destroy, Leela realized. They were here to measure, to learn, to report. Elias stepped into the open, weapon steady, voice loud. "You got your message. Now send one back. Red Mesa stands together." Jackson shifted closer to Elias, and for the first time the town saw it clearly, 2 enemies standing in the same line. The drones hovered as if processing. Then one by one they rose higher and turned away, vanishing over the ridge like dark birds disappearing into sunlight. The air slowly loosened. People began to breathe again. Leela climbed down carefully, hands shaking only after her boots hit the ground. Elias was there immediately, grabbing her shoulders, checking her for injuries without saying a word. "I'm fine," Leela said. Elias exhaled sharply. "Don't do that again." Leela looked up at him. "If I didn't, they would have marked the tower." Elias didn't argue because he knew she was right. Then his gaze moved past her to Jackson Vale. Jackson lowered his weapon and waited, respectful and still, like a man who understood the weight of being hated. Elias spoke, voice tight. "You said scouts come first." "They do," Jackson replied. "And now they know you're here." Leela looked between them. Her father's greatest enemy had just protected her life, and he had done it without pride, without boasting, without asking for thanks. The town buzzed with confused whispers. Elias' eyes were hard, but something inside them shifted. "You can stay," he said coldly, "until we understand what's happening. But you don't walk free, you don't give orders, you don't get near my daughter." Jackson nodded once. "That's fair." Leela opened her mouth to protest, but her father's hand tightened gently on her shoulder, warning her without words. Jackson glanced at her again, and his expression carried something quiet. Regret, yes, but also determination. As the wind swept red dust across the street, Leela felt it deep in her bones. This was only the beginning. The enemy in the sky had noticed Red Mesa, and the enemy her father feared had returned for a reason that was bigger than hate. Part 1 ended with the town standing in uneasy silence, knowing the next shadow in the sky would not be a small scout drone. It would be the real storm. The morning after the drone attack felt different. Red Mesa was still the same dusty frontier town, but the air carried tension. People spoke in quieter voices. Ranchers checked their equipment twice. Children stayed closer to home. Everyone understood that the scouts would return. Leela Carter woke early and stepped outside. The red sun was just rising over the dunes, painting the sky in soft gold and orange. She walked toward the workshop beside the sheriff's station, where tools and spare tech parts were stacked neatly. Inside, Jackson Vale was already working. He stood over a hollow table, studying a flickering projection of the town's layout. Old walls, water towers, solar fences, and communication relays appeared as glowing shapes in the air. He moved calmly, adjusting positions and marking weak points. Leela crossed her arms. "You didn't sleep," Jackson glanced up. "I did, a little." She raised an eyebrow. "That doesn't look like a little." A small smile appeared on his face. "Frontier habits, when danger comes, rest becomes optional." Leela stepped closer, studying the map. "You're planning defenses." "Yes," he said simply. "My father said you don't give orders." "I'm not," Jackson replied. "Just preparing ideas. Elias can decide what he wants." The way he said her father's name surprised her. There was no anger in it, only respect mixed with sadness. She watched him for a moment. Growing up, she had imagined her father's enemy as cruel or arrogant. But Jackson looked tired, like a man carrying too many memories. "What really happened between you and my father?" she asked. Jackson paused, then looked back at the projection. "That's a long story. I've got time." He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "We fought together once, same side, same mission, then something changed, orders were given, I made a decision he couldn't accept." "That sounds simple," Leela said. "It was." She waited for more, but he didn't continue. Instead, he shifted the projection, highlighting the outer ridge. "The drones scanned from here. That means their main ship is likely beyond this range." Leela leaned over the table, pointing. "If they come again, they'll target water and power first." Jackson nodded. "You think like a defender." "I grew up here," she said. Outside, heavy footsteps approached. Sheriff Elias Carter entered, his expression serious. He looked between Leela and Jackson, clearly unhappy to see them working together but focused on the situation. "We need a plan," Elias said. "Town council meets in 1 hour." Jackson stepped back slightly, giving Elias space. "I've mapped possible defense points." Elias studied the hologram silently. Leela noticed how carefully Jackson avoided stepping too close, respecting the sheriff's boundaries. After a long moment, Elias nodded slowly. "Not bad." It wasn't praise, but it wasn't rejection either. Later that day, Leela rode with Jackson beyond the town limits. Elias had reluctantly allowed it after agreeing they needed to retrieve old defense tech from abandoned war sites. They traveled on hoverbikes, gliding across the desert sand. The wind rushed past them, carrying the scent of heat and dry earth. Massive rock formations rose like ancient guardians around them. For a while, neither spoke. Finally, Leela said, "You knew this place before I was born." "Yes." "What was it like?" Jackson slowed his bike slightly. "Harder, less peaceful, people were divided. Your father worked very hard to unite them." She smiled faintly. "He still does." They reached a ruined bunker half buried in sand. Rusted panels covered its entrance, but Jackson quickly located the manual release. Inside, old equipment waited, dusty but functional. Leela's eyes lit up. "These are old war shields." "Still useful," Jackson said. As they worked together lifting parts, their conversation became easier. Leela told stories about growing up fixing machines and racing across the dunes with friends. Jackson listened quietly, occasionally laughing softly. She noticed he never interrupted. "You're not what I expected," she admitted. He glanced at her. "Is that good or bad? I don't know yet." He smiled again, this time warmer. As the sun lowered, they sat outside the bunker sharing water from a flask. "Why did you really come back?" she asked. Jackson stared at the horizon. "Because I owe this place a debt. To my father, to everyone." There was something honest in his voice that made her chest feel tight. Back in Red Mesa, tension grew. Some townspeople distrusted Jackson openly. A few believed he had brought danger with him. That evening, whispers spread that a stranger had been seen near the solar fence. Elia's ordered patrols increased. Leela found her father standing alone near the corral. "You don't trust him at all, do you?" she asked gently. Elias didn't turn. "Trust isn't given easily. He saved the water tower. That doesn't erase the past." Leela hesitated. "Maybe the past isn't what we think." Elias faced her, eyes serious. "You don't know what he did." "Then tell me." He looked away again. "One day." His silence hurt more than anger. That night, another alarm sounded. This time, smaller drones appeared at the edge of town, testing defenses again. The militia responded quickly, using the shields Leela and Jackson had recovered earlier. Energy barriers flared to life, blocking scans. Jackson stood beside Elias during the defense, offering quiet suggestions rather than commands. "Angle the emitters," he said calmly. "Make them think you have more power than you do." Elias followed the advice without comment. The drones retreated faster this time. The town cheered softly, hope rising. Leela felt a surge of pride, and something else. Watching Jackson and her father working side by side made her realize how strong they could be together. Later, as the town settled, she found herself walking beside Jackson under the stars. "You were right about them," she said. "I wish I was." They walked in silence for a moment. "Do you ever get tired?" she asked. "Of fighting?" "Yes," he nodded slowly. "Every day." She looked at him carefully. The moonlight softened the lines on his face, revealing not just a warrior, but a man who carried regret and hope at the same time. Something inside her shifted. She realized she trusted him, more than she should. More than her father would ever accept. Jackson stopped walking. "You should go back," he said quietly. "Your father already thinks I'm trouble." She laughed softly. "Maybe you are. Probably." They stood facing each other, the desert wind moving gently around them. Neither spoke, but the silence felt warm rather than awkward. Leela suddenly understood her feelings. They had grown slowly, through shared danger, honest conversations, and quiet moments of respect. She had fallen in love with her father's greatest enemy. And she had no idea how to tell him. Far above them, unseen in the dark sky, a distant warship shifted position, watching Red Mesa closely. The real attack was coming. And when it arrived, nothing in their lives would remain the same. The sky above Red Mesa turned dark long before sunset. At first, it looked like a distant storm cloud. A shadow moved slowly across the blue horizon, growing larger every minute. People stopped what they were doing and looked up. The wind felt heavier, like the desert itself was holding its breath. Sheriff Elias Carter stood in the middle of the street, eyes fixed on the sky. "They're here," he said quietly. Beside him, Jackson Vale watched carefully. His face was calm, but his hands moved quickly as he adjusted a small scanner on his wrist. "It's a carrier ship," Jackson said. "Bigger than I hoped." Leela felt a chill run through her. The scout drones had been only a warning. This was the real danger. The alarm bell rang across the town, echoing between buildings. Militia members rushed into position. Energy shields powered up with a low, humming sound. Ranchers moved livestock into protected zones. Children were guided into underground shelters. Leela grabbed her tool belt and ran toward the defense station. She refused to hide while others fought for her home. Above them, the massive warship slowed, its dark metal surface reflecting sunlight like a blade. Smaller ships detached from its underside and began descending toward Red Mesa. Jackson spoke quickly. "They'll test your defenses first. Stay disciplined." Elias nodded once. He didn't look at Jackson, but he listened. The first wave of drones arrived, faster and more aggressive than before. They fired scanning beams across buildings, trying to map weaknesses. "Activate the outer shield," Elias ordered. Blue energy barriers flickered into place around the town. The drones fired small blasts, testing strength. Sparks flashed across the barrier surface, but it held. Leela worked at a console, adjusting power flow. "Shield stability at 80%. Jackson moved beside her. "Redirect energy from the south fence." "They're not attacking there yet." She followed his suggestion. The shield strengthened immediately. "You've done this before," she said. "Too many times," he replied softly. Outside, militia riders fired controlled shots to keep drones away from critical systems. Dust kicked into the air as hoverbikes moved across the desert, creating shifting patterns to confuse enemy targeting. The first wave retreated after several minutes, pulling back toward the carrier ship. A brief cheer rose from the town, but Jackson didn't celebrate. "That was only a test," he said. As if proving him right, the sky flashed again. This time, larger dropships descended, engines roaring like thunder. Leela swallowed hard. "They're serious now." The real battle began with a bright flash. Energy blasts struck the outer shield, shaking the ground. People stumbled but held their positions. Elias shouted commands, moving through the town like a steady storm, guiding everyone calmly. Jackson fought beside him, their movements almost perfectly synchronized despite years of hatred between them. "Left flank," Jackson called. "I see it," Elias answered, adjusting defenses. Leela watched them from the command station. Seeing them work together felt strange but powerful, like two halves of a broken tool finally fitting again. Suddenly, a heavy blast struck near the water tower, shaking the ground violently. Leela ran toward it without thinking. "Leela, wait!" Elias shouted, but she was already moving. The tower's power node flickered dangerously. If it failed, both water and shield systems would collapse. She climbed quickly, fingers moving fast as she opened the panel. Behind her, enemy troops landed outside the shield perimeter. They didn't rush forward immediately. They studied the defenses, calculating. Jackson noticed. "They're waiting for an opening," he said. Elias frowned. "Then we don't give them one." Inside the tower, Leela repaired a damaged circuit. Sweat ran down her face, but her hands stayed steady. Below, Jackson defended the area carefully, firing precise shots that forced enemy drones back without causing unnecessary destruction. He noticed a small squad moving along a hidden path toward the shield generator. "They're targeting the core," he shouted. Elias moved immediately, leading a group of defenders to intercept. For a moment, chaos filled the battlefield, dust, flashing lights, shouting voices. Then something unexpected happened. One of the enemy devices activated a projection, an old military recording. The hologram flickered in the air. Leela glanced down from the tower, confused. The recording showed a battlefield from years ago, the Frontier Wars. She saw her father, younger but unmistakable. Beside him stood Jackson. They were allies. The recording played audio. "Command orders, retreat immediately, leave civilian sector." Elias' younger voice responded, "There are still families there." Another voice, cold and official, answered, "Civilian loss acceptable, strategic withdrawal required." Jackson's younger voice spoke next, "We don't leave them." The recording showed Jackson breaking formation, flying toward the civilian area while explosions filled the sky. Leela's breath caught. Her father had always said Jackson betrayed him, but this recording showed something different. Jackson had disobeyed orders to save innocent people. The hologram shifted, revealing corrupted commanders secretly selling battle information to corporate forces. Elias stared, shock filling his face. His hatred had been built on lies. The enemy had revealed the truth, maybe hoping to cause confusion. But instead, silence spread across the battlefield as everyone processed what they saw. Jackson looked down, clearly uncomfortable. "I didn't come back to prove anything," he said quietly. Elias didn't speak. His world had just changed. Suddenly, an explosion shook the ground near the tower. Leela lost her balance. A drone had slipped through a shield gap and fired toward her position. Before she could react, strong arms pulled her back. Jackson, he had moved faster than she thought possible, reaching the ladder and climbing halfway to shield her. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, heart racing. Their eyes met, and in that moment nothing else existed. Not the battle, not the past, just trust. Below them, Elias watched. He saw Jackson protecting Leela without hesitation, risking his own life. Something inside him softened. The battle intensified, but Red Mesa held strong. Clever traps and coordinated defense forced enemy forces to retreat temporarily. The carrier ship pulled back slightly, as if reassessing. As silence slowly returned, Elias approached Jackson. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Elias said, "You saved them back then, didn't you?" Jackson nodded slowly. "I chose civilians over orders. You thought I abandoned you." Elias swallowed, guilt heavy in his eyes. "I believed the wrong story," he admitted quietly. Jackson didn't blame him. He only said, "The past doesn't matter right now. They'll come again." Elias looked at him differently now, not as an enemy, but as someone he had misunderstood for years. Leela stood nearby, watching them. Hope filled her chest. But high above, the enemy carrier ship began preparing something new, a larger weapon charging slowly. The final battle was coming, and this time everything would be decided. The sky above Red Mesa burned with strange light. The enemy carrier ship hovered high in orbit, silent and heavy like a dark mountain. A deep humming sound spread across the air as its main weapon began charging. Lines of blue energy gathered beneath the ship, forming a glowing circle that grew brighter every second. People in the town watched with fear. Leela Carter stood beside her father and Jackson Vale near the command station. Dust moved slowly around their boots as the wind shifted. "They're preparing something big," Leela said quietly. Jackson nodded. "A final strike." "They don't want a long fight anymore." Sheriff Elias Carter crossed his arms, thinking fast. His face looked older than before, but stronger too. The truth about the past had changed something inside him. The anger he had carried toward Jackson for years had softened, replaced by a heavy understanding. "We can't outgun them," Elias said, "so we outthink them." Jackson looked at him with respect. "I agree." For a moment, the two men stood together without tension. Old enemies now forced to trust each other. Leela felt hope rise in her chest. Inside the command building, a holographic map of the desert appeared again. Jackson highlighted several points across the dunes. "They think we are small," he said. "They expect us to defend directly from inside the town." Elias nodded slowly. "So we don't." Leela leaned closer. "You mean we draw them away?" "Yes," Jackson said. "We make them believe Red Mesa is weaker than it really is." Elias turned to the militia leaders. "Prepare the decoy generators. Move half our shield power to portable emitters outside the main walls." Captain Rourke smiled slightly. "A trap." "A frontier welcome," Elias replied. The town moved quickly. People who had never fought before worked side by side. Ranchers, mechanics, traders, everyone became part of the plan. Portable shield emitters were hidden behind rock formations. Old mining tunnels were prepared as escape routes. Hover riders practiced quick movement patterns to confuse enemy targeting systems. Leela helped adjust energy flow, her hands moving confidently across glowing controls. Jackson watched her for a moment. "You've become a strong leader," she smiled softly. "I learned from good teachers." Their eyes met briefly, filled with unspoken feelings. As the carrier ship's weapon reached full charge, smaller attack ships began descending again. But this time, Red Mesa looked different. The main town appeared quiet, almost weak. Shields flickered low, as if power was failing. The enemy ships advanced quickly, believing victory was close. Elias stood on a ridge outside town, hidden behind rocks. Around him, militia riders waited silently. "Hold, hold," he murmured. The first enemy ships crossed into the trap zone. "Now," Elias shouted. Hidden emitters activated instantly, forming overlapping shields that trapped the enemy inside a narrow corridor. Energy beams fired from multiple angles, forcing the ships into defensive positions. Hover riders rushed forward, creating moving targets that confused enemy sensors. Jackson coordinated from another ridge, guiding movements with calm precision. "Push them toward the canyon," he called through the comms. The plan worked perfectly. Enemy ships were forced into tight formations where their larger weapons could not fire safely. Above them, the carrier ship fired its main beam. A massive column of blue light shot downward, but instead of striking Red Mesa directly, it hit empty desert, where decoy signals had tricked targeting systems. The ground exploded with light far away from the town. Cheers rose from the defenders. "They missed," someone shouted. Leela laughed with relief, but Jackson's voice came through her comm unit quickly. They'll adjust targeting soon. We need to finish this fast. The final phase of the battle began. Elias and Jackson led a small team toward an enemy command ship that had landed near the canyon edge. If they could disable its signal, the remaining forces would lose coordination. Dust storms rose as they approached, giving them cover. Leela followed despite her father's earlier warnings. She refused to stay behind while others risked everything. Inside the canyon, energy blasts flashed between rocks. The team moved carefully, avoiding direct confrontation whenever possible. At one moment, a falling piece of debris nearly struck Elias. Jackson pulled him aside just in time. Elias looked at him, breathing hard. "You keep saving my life." Jackson gave a small smile. "You saved mine more than once long ago." For the first time, Elias nodded with gratitude instead of suspicion. They reached the command ship. Leela quickly connected her tools to the outer panel. "Give me 30 seconds, she said. Enemy soldiers approached from the ridge. Elias and Jackson stood back to back, defending her position. Their movements flowed naturally now, like partners who had fought together for years. Leela finished the override. "Done!" The command ship's signal shut down. Instantly, enemy drones began moving erratically. Ships lost formation. Confusion spread across their ranks. High above, the carrier ship hesitated. Seeing their advantage, Elias gave the final order. "All units, push forward." Red Mesa's defenders advanced together, forcing enemy forces to retreat. One by one, the attack ships pulled back toward orbit. Finally, the carrier ship turned away slowly, disappearing into the distant sky. Silence returned to the desert. The battle was over. As sunset painted the dunes in gold and red, the people of Red Mesa gathered in the main street, laughter mixed with tired smiles. Repairs began immediately, but hope filled the air. Elias stood beside Jackson quietly. "I was wrong about you," Elias said at last, "for many years." Jackson shook his head gently. "We both carried heavy memories." Elias looked toward Leela, who spoke with friends nearby. "You protected her," he said. "I would always protect innocent people," Jackson replied simply. Elias studied him carefully. Then he sighed, a long breath releasing years of anger. "She cares about you," he said. Jackson remained silent. Elias added, "And I see now why." Leela approached, nervous but hopeful. She watched her father carefully. Elias looked at her, then at Jackson again. A small smile appeared on his face. "Maybe enemies don't have to stay enemies forever," he said. Relief filled Leela's heart. The wind moved gently across Red Mesa as night fell. Stars appeared slowly above the desert sky. The frontier remained wild and uncertain, but something new had been born. Trust where there had been hatred, love where there had been fear, and unity stronger than old legends. And for the first time in many years, Sheriff Elias Carter felt peace watching his daughter walk beside the man he once called his greatest enemy. The Wild West had been shocked not by destruction, but by forgiveness.